Welcome to the Reel Rematch, the podcast where we unpack Hollywood's twin films. Sometimes cloned on purpose, sometimes by accident, but always in competition. Today's matchup, Hitotokoro Haiku, Cube 2021 versus Manhole from 2023. Two Japanese survival thrillers trapping their protagonists in sealed spaces and forcing them to think, panic, and claw their way toward escape. One reworks a cult sci-fi death maze into a cold geometric nightmare. The other turns a single manhole into a social media age descent into desperation and humiliation. Which film squeezed the most tension from confinement? Which one delivered the sharper psychological spiral? And which escape nightmare still lingers longest once the walls close in? Hey mates, how you going?
Jeff, I'm well. How are you?
Oh, very good, very good. Looking forward to what we're discussing here today. So what are we looking at?
So, Jeff, we are doing our first two foreign language films.
Excellent, excellent. And have we picked a particular region we're going to look at, Justin?
So we are going to Japan.
Hey.
So we are doing Cube, which came out in 2021, and Manhole, which came out early 2023. This episode, Jeff, has got a very unique name, coined by you, and
yes,
will be pronounced by you.
So this is the Hitotokoro Haiku, and Hitotokoro, from my research, means one spot, one location, because both of these films contain situation thrillers. So just in doing a bit of Google research, that felt like the appropriate word to explain these two films. As we do, twin films contain situation thrillers at the same time. What are these films about?
So which one did Claustrophobia best?
Yes.
Which one ramped up the tension? Which one made us want to run outside and run through fields of daffodils?
Absolutely. Which one? So let's get into it.
So I think it's important to probably start off with grounding what these films are actually about. I find that unless I have otherwise been directed to a foreign language film, with a few exceptions in terms of like really well-known actors or something that's actually been telegraphed as being an important or an interesting film, I won't necessarily seek it out. I'm not as forward-oriented as I used to be, hunting down these type of films.
Yep.
So I think it's interesting to therefore ground, especially, if I think of myself, that, foreign language films are not my go-to. English language films are.
Yep.
Right? I'm certainly, poorer for it. And it was a delight to actually watch these two films back to back in a manner that I haven't done for, many years. So Cube is a remake of a
remake of a 1997 film.
Thank you. That came out in 2021. So the 1997 film was directed by a gentleman by the name of Vincenzo Natali. It was a Canadian production. And I do remember seeing this film in the cinemas in Perth.
I remember seeing this film in the cinemas in Perth.
I cannot remember who I saw it with, nor the cinema I saw it at.
Okay, so let's just take it as we both saw this film in the same year.
We may or may not have seen it together.
I think the proximity of being in the same city is enough.
The vibe was there.
Absolutely, yes.
So, in the original, a handful of strangers wake up in a shifting maze of cube rooms. Some rooms are trapped. There are numbers on hatches, which are clues, and survival depends on cooperation. Alas, stress, fear, self-interest, paranoia turn on each other, hilarity, and maybe some untimely deaths ensue. Now, compared with the 1997 original, the Japanese remake leans a lot harder into social pressure and conformity, bullying and scapegoating, generational resentment, and the idea that the cube is actually an institutional machine more than a once-off mystery as painted in the original.
Yeah, but again, then you've got the similarities between the two films. So obviously we've got the same core setup, The strangers wake in that interlinked grid of rooms, with some rooms booby-trapped, and that they must cooperate to survive. You've got those key mechanics returning, which is they've got to test the rooms by throwing something into them, in this case the boots, working off the numbers that are on the hatches, and the revelation that they find out that the rooms themselves actually move. So they're all the similarity. Then you've got, again, maths as a survival tool. Both use that prime-related number logic to work out what is safe, what is not safe, and to coordinate style approach towards that safety exit step. You've got the same social breakdown engine. So you've got the fear, the blame, the power dynamics, which become just as lethal as the booby-trapped rooms. And then you've got the light exit endpoint is the same. Both cold-made in at escape. We face that threshold that reads like a release rather than that fully explained resolution. So those were the key differences, I think.
Similarities,
I'm sorry, yes.
So, but I'll jump into the differences,
Yeah.
right? So tone jumps out straight away. You've got the nihilism of Natali's 97 original. You know, it's sharper, bleaker, more cynical. Characters are spiraling into collapse. In the 2021 remake by Shimizu, you know, it feels more operatic. It's more sort of emotional, I guess, forward, right, with clear attempts for character sympathy, you know, and redemption beats. The backstory delivery in the 97 original is mostly hinted at through dialogue, whereas in the 2021 remake, there's actually flashbacks. And for me, they were almost like intrusions and took me out of the story a little bit. However, that being said, I thought, you know, served what the remake was trying to do.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the other, you know, key difference for me, and then I'll throw to you, Jeff, is how much the, I guess, the 2021 kind of tries to provide an explanation as to why this is all happening, whereas 97 was, you know, ambiguous, right?
Yes, very much so.
You know, it was, you know, the why was unknowable, right? It just kind of ends in this open-ended fashion. 2021 version was, you know, really this sort of like system overlord explanation, you know, the AI/android framing with one of the characters that shall remain unknown as a spoiler. But, you know, the fact that it was really trying to kind of give you the reason for being, right?
Yeah.
Versus it just is.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like you said, like we were talking about before, you know, your character archetypes are still mapped there. They're not quite identical. So, you know, the remake echoes those roles from the original. So you've got your leader and your aggressors. You've got your technician or your maths outsider or your savant, you know, but recast them now into this contemporary Japanese social type. So you've got your precarious worker, your abusive family subtext, your generational resentment from your very young boy through to your aging office drone almost, right? So, and then you get down to who survives and what that means, you know. So in 97, it was the savant who survived. His name was Kazan. He exited into the light. But again, as you said before, the ending was it was bleak and it was ambiguous and it wasn't a release. Whereas Uno, the young boy who gets it out here, kind of has said the reason what he's going to do is part of his change. So he heads into the light to make that change, right? So while it's still a bit ambiguous, kind of has an almost focal ending point, right? So before the cube, which is the spoiler stinger here, kind of resets itself, is the difference between 97 and 2021.
I mean, the 2021 really has that sense of being an escape algorithm.
Yes.
Right. So,
absolutely.
you know, for contemporary audiences, I think they'd like latch onto that. And it's not subtle.
Yeah.
Right. The interesting thing, and I've got two things that you just mentioned, is that the young boy, you know, spoiler alert, you know, he's the one who escapes, right? But, you know, the English lit part of me says, so interested to get your read on this, is that the reason he gets go because, you know, he's pure, he hasn't created as many sort of like sins on his fellow, you know, citizen, and there's hope for him.
Yeah.
Right? He hasn't been corrupted or poisoned by this system yet.
Yes.
There's still hope in his heart. You know, there is still a chance of positive change.
Yeah.
Right? But you did mention the precarious worker. So that's Gato-san?
No, Gato-san is the main one.
He's the main guy. Is it Oshi? No, Ochi?
Ochi's the young guy. Ande-san?
No, that's the That's the
older guy. Is that who we're talking
older
about?
guy, the salaryman. No, the precarious worker, the guy who goes a little bit.
Oh, that's Ochi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ochi.
He's the
So
works
that's
in the
Ochi.
convenience store. Yes, the one who snaps at the end. Yeah.
I would have loved to see that guy in Clerks 3.
He would have fit. He would have fit in very, very well.
And it's just like, whoa, let's dial it down a little. I mean, I'm frustrated too, pal.
But don't slam people's heads into doors.
Yes, correct. So, any other differences, or is that where we landed?
Look, the main one. No, I think again the same archetype was there, as you said. The maths was there, but it was simplified. We know that Shimizu simplified it because, as you stated before, it was more about the characters. For him, it was the character study, not as much about the gritty nihilism that Natali did in '97.
So let me now provide, if you don't mind, Jeff, a quick summary of hashtag Manhole,
Sure.
Just about the plot. So Shunsuke-san is the top sales performer at the real estate company where he works. He's set to marry the president's daughter, who's pregnant. His life is going great by every single metric. On the day before his wedding, his colleagues hold a surprise party for him, just at a local izakaya pub. On his way home from the party, Shinsuke-san falls into a deep manhole in the middle of the night. He wakes up at the bottom of the hole. He's injured his leg on a rusty, broken ladder during the fall and is unable to move too freely. His smartphone's GPS is malfunctioning and he can't find his current location, which is teased out throughout the film without me giving anything really away.
Yeah.
Initially, when he calls the police, they think it's a prank. He asks for help from his ex-girlfriend, Mai,
yeah.
because she's the only person he can contact. But as he's unable to determine his actual location, he sets up a Manhole Girl account on social media, which I guess is similar to Twitter, and tries to get the internet to help pinpoint his location and save him.
Yep.
So these are the two films in that contained location claustrophobic thriller.
Yes.
That we have chosen as our twin pair. A little bit more squishy than some of the other twin pairs that we've done, but I think we both agreed it wasn't a bad place to start.
No, it was again, like you said at the very beginning, I don't often seek out foreign language films like I used to. Like you said, I'm in exactly the same boat. If it's a well-known or a award-winning one that's noted in the media, then yes, I'll probably seek it out. But films like this, not always. So again, really interesting choice, really different to watch. Same thing, did them back to back. So having that self-contained thriller scenario was good. I think I did it. I don't know if you did it in this way. I did Cube and then Manhole, right? Which I think is the better way to do it from my perspective. You can tell me if you did it differently or if you agree or don't agree.
I did the same.
Yeah.
I did the same, and there was actually no rhyme or reason. I literally just put Cube on before hashtag Manhole.
100%. Same again.
But to your point, I'm actually happy that I did it that way.
Yeah.
What I will say is watching these two films, you realise how much other cinema has really been influenced by Hollywood. Now, I think there's a great level of artistry in both of these films. Cube feels like more the sort of like the obvious, Hollywood production and otherwise. However, that being said, hashtag Manhole feels like an absolutely great like Prime or Netflix movie for streaming.
Yeah.
It would really have pride and place, alongside those, those type of films. I think watching them is there was, I guess, the kind of the world building, the science fiction elements, the whole constructed notion of Cube, feeling quite very artificial
Yep.
right? To begin with, and again, having seen the original, 24 years ago, 24 years before the remake came out, already had a sense of what it was going in, right?
Yes.
So there's less of that. It's novel. I'm experiencing this in real time. What a great concept.
Yes.
Still is a great concept, and I really loved how they leaned into, the social anxieties, and some of the the cultural tensions, not just the generational tensions, but you had class tensions there, and otherwise they weave that in. I think that was the right way to lean and make it feel a little bit more of a socio-political, sort of like tension movie, amplified in this pressure cooker environment. And then, Manhole, I thought they did a lot of things really, really well and executed things really, really well. Like, again, felt like this really nice contemporary version of, someone who at a surface level appears to have everything going for them, right? And seems to have it all. But you don't actually have to scratch too long or too deeply to realize that what's underneath is a little picture of Dorian Gray.
Yeah, not just
Right.
that, but it's all scarring,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Literally and metaphorically in this case. But yeah, I agree. So, but just both different, I think, like, and maybe that was the reason for the unconscious choice of going by Cube first and Manhole second, is I kind of knew what I was walking into with Cube first.
Yeah.
Right?
And look, I think there's been other films, just jumping back to hashtag Manhole. There's been other films, that have come out that have tried to use, mobile phones, instant messaging, other, sort of contemporary communication or social media devices. And a lot of the time it's felt a little bit gammy,
Yep.
to be honest. Now, I'm not saying that at times hashtag Manhole doesn't, but I think it does it in quite an authentic way and doesn't, and it does it in a way that feels quite natural for the time that film was released in 2023 versus like, hey, isn't this cool? We're picking up on a trend, we're amplifying, we're magnifying that, we're turning it completely into something that's overblown, right? And Hollywood does that with great regularity, but I think Manhole really did feel a bit more of the moment, right? And I think more and more films are going to be made this today. Whereas if this had to come out maybe in 2014, right? I don't think it quite hits in the same manner.
No, I mean, again, the technology wouldn't have matched what happened here, which I think it helped this film because, like you said, there's, and we'll get into the reasons why, but just the way everyone helps him discover where he is, and so forth from his social media actions.
And so, just on that, like, literally, the reason I went to 2014 is because the other film that jumped to my mind when I was watching hashtag Manhole was the Jon Favreau directed Chef, right?
Really?
Yeah, and the reason being is that
because I had a different one came to mind.
Well, share that in a moment. So in Chef, Jon Favreau is a leading chef at a 2-hat, 3-hat, or 2-star, 3-star Michelin restaurant. Without giving anything away, in case anyone hasn't seen that film, ends up trying to simplify his life and rediscover what he used to love about cooking, what he used to love about himself when he was cooking. Get back to basics and gets a food truck. And focuses on, I think for the most part, Spanish or sort of like Latin style cooking. Back then, Twitter was really taken off. And one of the ways it was really taken off and amplified wasn't just like news in the moment, was, food reviews and people saying, hey, I've just found the best, in this example, Cuban sandwich. You've got to go here. It's amazing. Or I found these great donuts, or I found this, or I found that. And that was becoming a real thing, and then just went absolutely crazy for a couple of years until now, like everyone does it and everyone's expecting that to happen versus like, back then it's like, hey, this is really starting to become a thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was where my mind went when I saw at least that element in #Manhole. My mind went back to the Favreau film.
Okay. My mind went back to a film from the 90s called Shattered. I don't know if you remember that, starring Tom Berenger, Greta Scacchi, and Bob Hoskins.
Ah,
He wakes up in a hospital. He's been in a bad accident, takes the bandages off his face because they've had to rebuild his face. And the whole film is him trying to work out who he is. And then it has the twist at the end, which is a spoiler for this film, right?
really? You know what? I've only got vague recollections of that. I don't think I could even look you in the eye and tell you that I've even watched it. Like, I've got vague recollections, but you know how so many of those like 90s thrillers had similar elements?
Yeah.
They were kind of echoing each other.
So the twist, I'll give it, I mean, it's here. The film came out in 23. Spoiler alert, everybody. So obviously Shinsuku isn't Shinsuku, as we find out, right? He's had his face-off rebuild moment. But in Shattered, Berenger goes through this whole process with Hoskins working out, and turns out he's not Tom Berenger. He's actually Scacchi's lover. And when the car accident happened, she got Tom Berenger's face planted on the lover so that he didn't die in the car crash and the lover's still alive, right? That's the twist.
Oh,
And I don't know why I have not seen this film since the mid-90s, but that just went bing in my head.
is that right?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
But it just went, I just sat there and went, that's all that came to my mind when that thing happened, was Face Off and Shattered.
Yeah, Face Off for sure. But only with that construct, right?
Yeah.
And again, something that's not revealed until a little bit later. So, Jeff, we found interest in these films. How do critics and audiences find interest, or how do they react to these two films?
It's very interesting with these two because they're kind of, I was going to call them a tale of two cities here, differences. But then should I say prefectures because that's more Japanese? I don't know. So as of right now, Cube doesn't have an RT score because there's only 3 reviews. So it doesn't actually have a Rotten Tomato score at all. It's only got a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb and no Metacritic score as well because there aren't enough reviews for it, right? So it doesn't have anything. Meanwhile, Manhole has a 93% Rotten Tomatoes score, 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, but also not enough reviews on Metacritic to give it a Metacritic score. So,
and can I just stop you there? And we've mentioned this before. This is where I think, one of the failings of Internet Movie Database, Metacritic, and Rotten Tomatoes really fall over. They're really designed for like Western audiences.
Yeah.
And they certainly are pretty heavily, tilted towards American audiences, right?
Yeah.
So when you do have, films that aren't necessarily, telegraphed from great critics, or they've had festival recognition, or it's a superstar director, or something controversial happen, they're just not really going to get the love or attention that even sort of pedestrian everyday also ran American films.
Exactly. Because with the audience scores, Cube does have a Rotten Tomato score, but it sits at a rather woeful 21%. And these audiences did not like this film at all. And again, once you read the reviews, you can see the common trait I found across reviews trying to find them was, what was the point? This doesn't serve any purpose. It was remade. And I don't know if it's a Western person watching it and not trying to get the cultural Japanese side of it. But they just, the common thing I read was that no character, no story, no development. No.
So, yeah, I mean, the rest of the world says to America, hello. Because they've been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
Right? So you think that, the Japanese have taken this, what was a cult sensation and a property that was really well received in their country, a passage of time, and 20 plus years is enough, right? They have a fresh take, which is, let's lean into more of the socio-political stuff that's going on. Let's make it a little bit kind of like slicker. Let's maybe not have as many gruesome kind of like kills and booby traps. So it's kind of like one thing that was kind of lacking for me from the remake vis-a-vis sort of the first one. I know we didn't really call that out.
Again, a lot of people said was why, when the Japanese are known to turn the gore level up, particularly in their J-horror films, right? They're not afraid to throw the buckets of blood across the screen.
And it's interesting because, like, you know, if you had to categorize these films being a segment of a broader, you know, sort of like film type or trope within Japan, you absolutely would put them in J-horror, but it certainly feels J-horror light.
Yeah.
Right? And again, like that's why the social commentary aspect kind of really, you know, struck out at me. It's like, oh, this is a film that really wanted to say something, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty much using this as a vehicle to, you know, turn the mirror around, you know, to society and make a few comments, right? Which I think is really interesting. And as I said, not just the generational thing in there as well, but, you know, Western audiences, you know, any sort of a foreign-based audiences, I know really small sample size, but, you know, more people are really sort of, you know, questioning, pushing back, you know, right now in a manner that, you know, that probably we last saw en masse was like, you know, really back in the, you know, the 70s. And you saw that replicated so often in some of the greatest films of all time that came out of America, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. So I think that's an interesting take. And like, you know, in and of itself, there's something there. But I think it does enough with it to give itself a little bit of a difference. However, that being said, it's not really that great a film.
No, and that's, I mean, again, when you read them, you're like you said, there's possibly further explanation that we don't get from a cultural perspective. But again, it's not a great film.
Yeah.
Really simple things.
And you know, I remember when the original came out, my feeling was great concept.
Yeah.
Amazing what they did with so little. Not sure if I'll watch it again.
I probably haven't seen it since 97.
And, you know, if you had to tell me back then, you know, gun to my head, what would you give it? It's a solid 6.5.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, the Japanese version, you know, I'd probably give a solid 5.
I kind of agree with the IMDb score of 4.5 out of 10. 4.5 to 5 out of 10.
It's about right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a little low. It's a little critical. So, I mean, I do get some of the pushback. But, you know, remakes, I mean, again, like you look at the remake, and I think it came out in 97 or 98, Gus Van Sant starring Vince Vaughn doing Psycho.
Yeah.
Like, there were a few little creative flourishes. And I remember especially towards the end, or certainly the last third of the film, of that one, but it was almost like a shot-by-shot remake, and they were kind of fixing the technical flaws that probably evaded Hitchcock based on, you know, the
limitations. It was just
the limitations of the equipment and the technology that he had at the time, right? Yeah. So, you know, I do get the pushback, and I think you're going to find this no matter what, right? When people are developing, you know, property that certainly, you know, had some cut through in the cultural zeitgeist, be that, you know, a book that's getting adapted, a film that's getting remade, you know, a podcast that's getting turned into a TV series, or whatever the, you know, a play that gets turned into a film, whatever the variation is.
Yeah.
You're always going to upset some people.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I don't think this one was probably had enough cultural cut through to upset too many people at all, right? Because the majority of the audience would have been Japanese.
Yes.
I think you would have had some hardcore cubists, if I can call them that, fans of the original.
Like it.
Right? You know, railing and pushing back, you know, all 27 of them.
Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah, exactly. So now if you want to look at box office for these two, so I had to look a bit deeper for this, but I did find some interesting things here. So again, obviously the numbers we've talked about in other films, again, are Western audiences and probably Western films that do penetrate into international markets. So obviously we talk lots of dollars here. But anyway, Cube came first. It opened in October 22nd, 2021. Took 800. Now I'll talk US dollars here because that's mostly what I found. Took 835,000 opening weekend, which is probably not bad in terms of Japan, and ended with a domestic gross of 2.38 million in there. It also had cinematic releases in Hong Kong and South Korea in April and August of the same year, of 2022, and took in another massive whopping $87,591 across those two markets. So I ended up with about a guess of roughly 2.46 million US, right? I couldn't find a budget of it to tell you what it was. So in trying to find it, it said average budgets for films of this nature in Japan are anywhere between 450,000 US and 1.6 million US. That was just a Google search, but I couldn't tell you what it was, right? The odd thing about, so you've got Cube, which was not a great film, has terrible ratings and reviews, took $2.5 million. Then you've got #Manhole, which opened in February 2023. And at the same year, only 10 days later at the Berlin International Film Festival. So it actually showed there too. Weirdly, I cannot find any box office information. So, and there is some commentary that the film took absolutely no money in its opening weekend, full stop, as well. So I haven't been able to verify any of that. Of course, that's just from some internet searches and bits and pieces. The only box office number available that I could find was that it took $16,800 in Russia in August of 2023.
Well, it's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
Yeah.
But again, I did some looking, and again, we spoke about this before we started recording. According to Box Office Mojo, there were, of the top 153 films at the Japanese box office in 2023, it is not on there.
Oh.
Now, from 150 to 153, you've got 150 was Black Panther Wakanda Forever, took $25,051.
Right.
At 151 was The Menu,
yeah.
which took $18,945. At 152 was Strange World, the animated film, which took $4,037. And then the last film on the list at 153 was The Desperate Hour, which took a whopping $58.
I mean, it cost someone just $58 to produce that report.
And write the thing somewhere on the internet.
Yeah,
so you know what I mean?
That film's lost even more money.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It doesn't show up.
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre.
But, you know, that's the other thing. Can I just jump in here as well, is that there is no equivalent, for the most part, to Internet Movie Database, Box Office Mojo, or, the other, publications that we can go to seek information on a regular basis about, big budget tentpoles or independent films or films that are just on streaming.
Yeah.
Right? Is that I did find a smattering, and they say, oh, this is like the Japanese version of this. And it just was not. It was certainly not apples for apples. So I found it really hard to get some additional detail that we usually take for granted.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it does exist, but it's probably impenetrable to you and I, not being native Japanese speakers.
Exactly.
Or even having a schoolboy, passing knowledge of the language.
Exactly right. So, exactly right. So, yeah, that was, to me, the interesting take from that was that I couldn't find any number at all for Manhole.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, like we always like to do, Jeff, why did these two films about similar premises come out so soon together, right? I mean, it feels like the same or a similar idea landing twice, but in a more squishy sense than how we've, more strictly applied our sort of like twin film definition in the past. I would say for mine, these two films are probably part of a broader, contained thriller wave that wasn't just sort of hitting, so Japan and Korea, but probably, sort of like Southeast Asia a bit more broadly.
Yep.
So, it's really strong commercial storytelling advantages in terms of you've got more or less one location. So you've contained costs as well as contained the story and the people. You've got a ticking clock, high drama. People love that. I love that. You've got a puzzle hook.
Yep.
You've got that intrigue. And again, it's highly marketable. People kind of get this. And there's instant drama and, usually low budgets. So there was also probably the pandemic era that we'd have to consider, right? So, you think the Japanese remake of Cube was shot between October and November 2020.
Yep.
Right? So that's really deep in the bowels of, COVID.
Yeah.
So, kind COVID certainly didn't kind of cause it, but, films like this almost operationally or logistically, became easier to do in this manner. It was a safer bet, right?
Yeah.
So, one less people, one location, much less elements left to chance and much more controllable and otherwise, right? So
Yeah.
we've already spoken about why sort of, Cube was adapted for the Japanese audience. Now, Jeff, why don't you tell us about, Manhole, which is really kind of like a buried alive thriller, just updated for a Japanese audience.
Yeah, not just a Japanese audience, but like the social media era, because that's such a big, important element of the whole film. I mean, when you know me, sometimes I try and look for the worst reviews I can find about films, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, quick tangent, couldn't find one about Manhole. The lowest it had was 4 out of 10 stars anywhere I looked, right?
Oh.
But the one thing I took that was mentioned multiple times, this is from one of them, was literally someone and this is actually from a review on Letterboxd, was when looking for what phone did he have? The battery on that thing is crazy. And that line is repeated numerous times throughout a lot of reviews, obviously, as part of the social media. I mean, I don't know about you, but you spend that much time on your phone over hours and hours, it's going to die. Anyway, but yes, you're right. Manhole is that updated, buried alive thriller in the social media age. Like, Cube is that system maze institutional thing and working your way through that. Manhole is that single incident survival thriller that pivots into that social media spectacle, because you've got with the mob dynamics, with him working on the Pecker app and then the Searcher app and those things and the maps and everything. And that's exactly how it was pitched and received at festivals, this high concept survival hook in the social media age. So, and even in interviews throughout it, the filmmakers discussed that intent and how it played with those genre expectations. So, yeah, it was really interesting.
So I think without trying to overclaim, COVID being this kind of like great, catalyst for these sort of like two films coming out, it didn't cause these two films. I think there was, I don't know if serendipity is really the right word, but there was a convergence or alignment of probably a number of things that were going on. And obviously the fact that COVID, in this regard at least, was almost like a happy accident that these films were coming out. But, the COVID era really did see very strong and sustained concern about, mental health, right? And the impacts that obviously was having on citizens around the world. So depression, economic stress, and I think amplifying that natural or ambient pressure is what makes the claustrophobic thrillers, people trapped in a box, resonate. I think time and time again, like everyone, I think can.
Well, we were all trapped in a box, weren't we?
Literally, right? But everyone can identify, I think, with with that. And if we look to the west of Japan, a similar thing was happening in Korea, right? It had a very similar form. So there were a lot of like contained situations, contained pressure sort of films are going on, a lot of things that were focused on socio-cultural, political, observations and wanting to make commentary or a statement about something that had been going on for, a period of time. But they were slightly different pressure points, right? The Korean ones that came out of a similar nature. So, Jeff, I'm talking like Concrete Utopia. I'm talking Squid Game, Wall to Wall, I think also known as 84 Square Meters. These were more around economic class pressure cookers, right? I mean, you go back further a bit. Was it 2019 that Parasite came out?
Yes.
Again, so like, this whole sort of economic and class pressure thing was huge in Korea, right? But again, they were all happening in these contained situations. So this really kind of, cultural variation on theme thing that was happening from one country to the other was like really, really quite interesting, right? Is that, looking at a number of the films that came across, both audiences in Japan and Korea at the time, I've got a number of ones listed. So hear me out on this, right? So from 2020 to 2024, there were like 5 films that jumped out at me that, really had the same kind of echo effect in terms of, this whole, contained pressure, cooker sort of, thriller scenario that was occurring, right? This trap survival cluster that was happening in Japan. So we've spoken about hashtag Manhole, and we'll continue to speak about that. We've spoken about, and we'll continue to speak about, the 2021 remake of Cube. There was also a film that was released in 2022 called Remember, which was about teens stuck in a time loop curse, right? And escape requires solving a repeating night problem, right? Sounds a lot like other American films that we've seen as well.
Yep.
There was a 2024 film that was released called Confession, about 2 men trapped by a snowstorm in a lodge sort of hut situation. And a single confession kind of turns survival into psychological warfare. And then there was Alice in Borderland. Wasn't just one room, but it was the same deadly game rules/survival logic in an isolated or closed world, right? And I think it's really interesting, right? Like all these films were using, confined space, but the real confinement was something else.
Yeah.
So, bureaucratic and systematic in Cube, network and social in hashtag Manhole.
Yeah.
So just really interesting. I mean, like I could get into the Korean ones, but why don't you jump into some of those for me?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, look, you and I have been talking about the Korea ones, and we might do an episode on those ourselves, seeing as we've gone down this little rabbit hole, for want of another term. But yeah, I mean, again, 5 really solid, contained, trap survival thrillers came out at the same time out of South Korea as well. So you've got hashtag Alive that came out in 2020, which is a zombie outbreak, but the hook on that is the isolation inside an apartment and improvising a way out of that apartment through the outbreak. You've got The Call, which came out in 2020, which is a housebound thriller where a phone connects 2 women across time and becomes a two-hander and with escalating consequences for the both of them. You've got Sinkhole in 2021, which is where residents plunge underground in a sinkhole. So it's a trapped disaster survival thriller just in a confined vertical space. So almost like Manhole, but a bigger sinkhole, I suppose.
Yeah.
Then you've got Concrete Utopia, which is a contained neighbourhood apartment complex survival story after a catastrophic event in South Korea, which is not just about the collapse of the housing, but the collapse of social order as well. And then you've got Project Silence as well, which is another one. So that's people isolated on a sort of collapsing airport bridge in the middle of a disaster while being hunted by sort of military experimented dogs. So it's sort of a under siege attack thriller set in one location on a bridge. So
wow,
yeah.
And like we mentioned before we started to do this deep dive, is that it was actually happening across Asia more broadly, and I think that the high concept in the economics can't be overplayed, and the fact that it's really simple drama that always seems to hit, right? There's always going to be an audience for these type of films. So the contained thriller instinct, they kind of share the same engine, right? In terms of tight space, escalating rules, pressure cooker environment. We did a bit of a cursory glance, Jeff. I'd say would be fair. And why don't I do one country and you do the next?
Sounds good.
So, other things that we found again in this sort of like 2020 to 2024 time zone was there were 2 films that came out in India that I found very similar. See You Soon. So screen life thriller told through computer/photo screens, phone screens. It was lockdown era, minimal locations by design. And then Dhamarka, largely anchored around a broadcaster receiving live threats, effectively a bottle thriller around a control room/studio axis.
Yep. Okay, well then we also looked at like Indonesia, where they do some interesting filmmaking. So 2 from there. So you've got Monster, which is like a kidnap escape thriller that's largely in an isolated house. It was marketed as a single location tension piece. And then just going back a little bit, one of the all-time greats, The Raid, which is one building, escalating floors, survival logic. It's action more than puzzles and escapism, but it's still in that contained space architecture. So,
and then we go to Thailand, right? So Faces Van, woman wakes in a strange institutional setting, a real survival identity puzzle sort of vibe that you had throughout that film within a contained space tension. And then Homes for Rent, house-centric horror thriller built around a confined domestic space.
Then there was the Philippines. We found a couple as well. So you've got Outside, which is where a family shelters in a farmhouse during a zombie outbreak, and there was the survival pressure cooker, primarily again in one location. And then you got a bit of a hybrid example called, excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, Nocebo. It's not purely one room, but it's a tight psychological sort of chamber piece with a vibe in practice. So, yeah, interesting from that perspective as well. More survival thriller, that one.
So, and the final country that we picked up on another twin pair of these type of films was Vietnam, right? So The Ancestral, built around a centuries-old family home with escalating houses of trap horror logic, and Vietnamese Horror Story, more of an anthology, but it explicitly uses tight modern interior setup, so an apartment gathering as an example, as a fear engine. So, what was sort of like, happening across all of these films. So it really came down to kind of like three big forces, right? High concept sells, it's economical, and it travels. Festivals, streamers love a sharp premise that works without having to do any cultural homework. People kind of get these tropes and these beats. And it's not just America that kind of, churns out sausages from the sausage factory, if you will. Not to say there's not merit in some of these in some of these films. But like we've seen in Cube, even where there's like some interesting that they do with that, invariably, we've seen this painted, a million times before. We've heard that soundtrack before. Unless 100%. There's a really interesting hook or deviation, it does become, part of the white noise.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting, echoes upon echoes upon echoes, right? And I think it's really interesting to see it from a, non-English speaking, and from a culture that's so different to our own. So let's jump back into the films.
Yeah.
Look, I've got some fun facts and trivia, which we like to do. I don't really have much around the cast and the crew because these aren't real characters, or I should say actors or directors that I follow that are known to me and aren't really that accessible. Like, I can't go through, and maybe shame on me, but I can't go through their CV as it is online and say, oh, yeah, do you remember them from this film or this TV series?
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen those films or those TV series, right? So not to say they haven't had important or great careers and done interesting things that really resonated or clicked at the time. They just didn't down here in Australia, and certainly not for me as the intended audience member, right? So I don't really have a lot of stuff about the directors of the cast, Jeff, before we jump into...
I've got a couple of things about the cast that I just looked up. So let's start with Cube. So Masaki Suda as Gochi-san. Is that how it was?
I think it was Goto-san.
Goto-san is apparently a very big star in Japan. And he was actually chosen specifically for the role because the type of person he is, the director wanted to subvert the hero archetype because that had what he'd been playing quite a lot, always that perfectly good hero type character. So that's why his character in this is haunted by that specific backstory about his brother's suicide, those flashbacks you said that constantly intersect into the film. And the plot point that was added to give that Cuba more psychological, almost purgatory-like feel that wasn't in the original's cold, bureaucratic atmosphere. So he was cast strictly for that. Because again, and it's similar to for Yuto Nakajima, again, I hope I pronounced that right, who played Shunsuke Kawamura. So
hang on, this is in hashtag.
This is in hashtag Manhole. Sorry, I should specify. In hashtag Manhole, Yuko Nakajima is Shunsuke Kawamura, right? Now, he's actually a J-pop idol. So he's from the band called Hey, Say, Jump. Sorry, it does have exclamation marks in it, so I figured I'd do that.
Oh, Hey, Say, Jump?
Yeah. You know.
No, I don't know them.
Well, you were playing them in the car as you pulled up before, so I do know.
Right.
Anyway.
I thought it was just some cool pop song.
Yeah. So the writer of this, Michitaka Okada, again, I'm hoping I'm not massacring those Japanese names, he actually had him in mind from the very beginning while he was writing the film.
Oh.
And the team wanted to take Nakajima, who has this very clean-cut, refreshing J-pop idol image, and completely destroy it by the end of the film. So that's why they cast him, because they wanted to take that pretty boy thing and destroy it. And they could see that was part of what the film does as well.
So he wasn't just in a boy band, though. I did see that he was a regular model for the men's fashion magazine Fine Boys.
Fine Boys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So apparently that was aimed at male university students.
Wow.
So we're not the target audience. And he also modelled for a men's fashion magazine called Men's Non No.
Men's Non No. Okay.
So in Italian, nonno would mean grandfather. I'm pretty sure that means something different in Japan.
In Greek, nonno is godfather. So there you go.
What can it mean?
Yeah, man.
But anyway, obviously a pretty boy.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Jared Leto in Fight Club, and they wanted to ruin a beautiful thing, Jeff.
Exactly right. I guess I didn't even think about this when I took these notes. They basically, again, this is almost a similar in both films, took two people who are considered one way in the world and then decided to flip them in the films.
Subvert it. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's interesting, because, again, creative types, are influenced by, similar things, right?
Mm.
So the fact that we are finding these, echoes sort of like in Japan, ones that we've been exposed to, should really come as no surprise to us.
Yeah, exactly. So, that was really interesting to see that. But that's all I had. And again, same thing for the directors. Two people I don't know. Literally wrote down my knowledge of Japanese film directors is not just limited but completely non-existent. So
Jeff, I've only got one thing about the director for #Manhole. Okay, so
Kazuyoshi Kumakiri.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I try.
So the website Taste of Cinema selected 20 soul-crushing films that are worth your time. So these are depressing films, Jeff, right? Now, even though people might feel sort of depressed or purely sad, the site, when they were making this list, chose to focus on movies that deal with actions and the emotions that make people ashamed of being human.
Right.
Now, can you say our director's name again, please?
Kazuyoshi Kumakiri.
So his debut film, I really need you to pronounce this as well. Kishiku Daenkei?
I'm probably going to say the same.
The Devil's Party, Jeff.
Okay.
Came out in 1998. So apparently his debut film ranked 19th on the great soul-crushing films that are worth your time, A Taste of Cinema. Do you want to know what was ranked number 1 on that same list?
As the depressing?
As the greatest soul-crushing film that are worth your time.
What?
Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream.
You know what? It was in my head. I couldn't think of what it was. You just put it there, and I would 100% agree with that. That film fucked with my head for months. I remember watching that with you.
Yeah.
You and I were living together at the time.
Yeah.
We released it. We watched it. I don't think I slept for 3 days because every night I'd close my eyes and just see how that film sucked me down for weeks. Oh, my God.
I think I took my TV into my room and locked myself in there for about 3 days and didn't want to see.
Yeah, I don't think we spoke for a while after that. Whether I was blaming you for making me watch it, who the hell knows?
Correct. Whether it was like your $7 that paid for the DVD. You know what? Like, you could actually still, cite that or have a new list with that same exact concept. I think in 15, 20 years' time. And if Requiem for a Dream isn't number 1, it's still top 5.
Hells yeah, 100%.
So anyway, that's really the only kind of fun facts I think collectively you and I could find about the cast and the crew.
Yep.
So, Jeff, we always do this, so I think we need to remain consistent. Jeff, did you find any Australian connection to either one of these films?
No.
Yeah, that's a hard no from me as well.
Hard no from me. So
So, real life inspiration. So obviously, Cube is a remake. What was interesting is that the writer and director Vincenzo Natali was actually an executive producer for this version. So I thought that was interesting. Now I've got another. It's actually not a fun fact. It's a bit alarming.
Okay.
About hashtag Manhole and some real life inspiration.
Yep.
I'm going to leave that to the end.
Okay.
So, trivia and fun facts. So, Jeff,
I got a few if you're interested.
hit me up.
All right, I'm going to start with again, hoping not to assassinate the Japanese here. So, the title for Cube is written as Cube and then kanji, which is one of the Japanese ways of writing letters.
Okay.
Right? Which is actually pronounced Cube do hatara saigo, or once you get in, it's over. That's what the Japanese kanji says after Cube in the title. Hashtag Manhole is pronounced hashtag Manhoru.
Oh.
That's the thing. So it's a close assimilation. Okay. Now, both of these obviously are single set locations. For Cube, again, like the 97 version, the production didn't build dozens and dozens of rooms. They used one high-tech modular cube set that was redressed and relit constantly. Because the remake relied on modern digital technology, which was a lot easier, the LED lighting within the walls was much more advanced than back in 97. So it allowed the director to change the mood of a room at the touch of a button, rather than back in the day they had to manually swap out gel filters, the whole thing.
Yeah, right.
So, again, you said it was shot in October, November, 60 days, whatever, to shoot a film like this. Probably 4 months, a bit longer in back in the day, right? So now the set for Manhole was shot in a large warehouse, and the crew built the specialised Manhole set. It was all modular walls.
Oh.
So to get those intense claustrophobic camera angles right in, close-ups on the screens, everything like that, the set was designed with removable walls. And again, you mentioned Hitchcock before, very Hitchcock thing. The crew members had to slide walls out of the way constantly to allow the camera to move.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then quickly slide them back into place before the angle and the lens panned back to where they were located. So that way the audience never saw the open side of the set. So very Hitchcock, because he used to plan those big moves that look like single shots. Rope is the most favourite example, where basically Rope is considered as a oneer because the camera just continually goes, even though again, I'm going off point here, Rope would always end on a black spot and the only reason he didn't do a oneer because he didn't have digital was because the canister ran out. But they would literally sit there and have it ready to go and go click, click, bang, keep the camera moving. That's how they shot Rope and make it look like a oneer.
Right.
So the other thing I found with production is they had a specific color coding system on hashtag Manhole for lighting. So blue light represented the moon from above.
Okay. The
sickly greenish tones were for the rain and the grime of the pit. The primary light source was the smartphone, obviously, the screen. The lighting team actually had to custom make and balance the exposure because a standard proper phone screen would have just completely blown out the white glare on Nakajima's face.
Right.
So it was a bit of a lighting trick to do that.
Yeah. I mean, great job by, I think, the production design for both films. Obviously, Cube had a pretty strong reference point. But yeah, I mean, like I think certainly for both films, probably one of the strongest points about both films. I mean, again, I think the other thing that was really working for me in hashtag Manhole's favour, and you've mentioned this more than once now, was Shunsuke-san. I mean, his performance, I think, is riveting, right?
Yeah.
And it's really great to see how desperate he gets, how maniacal he gets at times, and these little realizations or these, spherical little victories that he has. It all plays large, on his face in real time, and I think he did a really good job.
I agree. And I have to say that I was sitting there at that sort of 45-minute mark looking at how long the film had to go, going, where is this going?
Yeah.
Because I've never seen, never read anything, didn't know what it was going to take that twist. And then that first thing turns when he's on the phone.
Yeah.
And you realise, okay, hang on, what? And it switches from just a man stuck into there's more to this, and it becomes a mystery in itself, right? When he's in, because it's not just about him getting out of the survival element, it's about solving the reason why he's there to get out of the hole, right?
Yeah.
And even simple things for me like the bubble sequence, right? Which, again, they manually filled that entire set with bubbles and did that in real life to the actor, to Nakajima.
Interesting.
Right? But just the fact, like you sit there and you're looking at it going, the dude's going to drown in bubbles, but you don't think bubbles is going to be something that you're going to drown in, right?
That's right.
But just because as the tension was building at that point, that became such a sequence that you were like, oh my God, the dude's gone, right?
And you know what, like the fact that it was able to maintain that tension and ratchet it up, but then give you some small moments of reprieve throughout Manhole, I think, that's why you enjoy that roller coaster ride, or I enjoyed that roller coaster ride so much. Whereas in Cube, it had the inevitability that, that either someone was going to escape like they did in the original, right? Because, unfortunately remakes do suffer from that.
Yeah.
Or everyone was going to die.
Yeah.
Right? And just there wasn't that same tension. And I think that's the difference about a known quantity, unless they completely flip it and it goes somewhere else. I mean, it does have that, sort of escape algorithm, aspect, to it, where it restarts and it reloops again at the very end. And again, like, that was interesting, but it's almost like I wish they had have done something crazy and actually just done that in film and then went somewhere different, right?
Yeah.
Like take some learnings, iterate off that, and then do something different the next time. Because I just didn't really find any tension. And I've got to be honest, I didn't really have too much emotional stakes in any of the characters within Cube. I liked the flashbacks because I actually am a bit of a flashback guy. I'm a sucker for flashbacks, right? And especially those emotional, really dark ones about someone's, moment in life. But they took me out of the film completely because they were just so different.
Yeah. So
I just didn't have that. I mean, even though they're both meant to be sort of contained pressure films and otherwise, like, for me, it was like, give me another, gelatinous, human flesh cube and be done with it. Like, I didn't really want to know what was going to happen at the end or what happened to those characters. Whereas completely different experience than #.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do have some not quite jump the shark moments, but a bit of jump the shark for what became the ending of Manhole when he, spoiler alert, does get out and how he gets out, right? I thought it just, to me, and again, I don't know if it's if it's a cultural thing or what was in there, I didn't get it. And to be honest, with my version of this, towards the end, the subtitles changed and it became almost like an AI was trying to read Google Translate at the same time. So the wording became different. So I was trying to have to decipher what the subtitles said while the movie was happening in my head to try and understand how it's progressing. So that took me out a bit, but I thought it just got a bit, like I said, the fact that it took me back to a 90s thriller that I haven't seen since the 90s with that whole face-off change scenario, I thought it just went a little bit too far.
No, well, look, you're not wrong. And without really giving anything, further away, is that the last, 15, 20 minutes are really convenient from, a narrative or a plotting device, because there are a lot of things that just aren't explained. They're just kind of thrown at us as, hey, by the way, the person on the phone is actually this person and this guy's actually this person. Oh, yeah, and here's something happened 20 years ago or whatever it was before we even got here. It's like, what?
Oh, Old Boy was the other thing. That got Old Boy territory to me, right? That took me to Old Boy, as in something's happened back in the day when he's at school that someone's held onto for 20 years and put this man, therefore, here, right?
I think that's a great parallel. But then also you had random things happening, right? I mean, we talked about the keyboard warriors and, people seeking justice and being investigative sleuths through social media and otherwise. And let's jump into a point in terms of some of the real life inspiration for #Manhole in a minute.
Yeah.
But, that kind of like avenging netizen.
Like
right?
it. Yeah.
In #Manhole, like, that kind of came out of nowhere. But I think at the same time, that social commentary is that, well, this is what happens when, people do go down rabbit holes. They become radicalized.
Yeah.
And they have that strong sense of justice, and they feel that they should be acting out of some sort of, weird sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There was some crazy stuff in that last 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. And so just quickly, a couple more points I have about facts. So they shot it chronologically.
Ah.
So it was actually done that way because they did this to help the character that Nakajima paid, Shinsuku-san, to actually experience the physical and mental breakdown as he went. So as the shoot progressed, he got increasingly disheveled, increasingly dirty and exhausted, which mirrored the character's descent into desperation. So they did it that way on purpose.
Okay.
Now, you talked about all the social media things in here. So they actually came up with these bootleg versions of major brands. You already mentioned it. Pekka is Twitter. YouTube is...
Help me out, Jeff, from your bone.
YouTube.
Okay, great.
I'm sure you've heard of it. And Searcher is Google. Right?
I like with the colours as well. That was great.
Yeah, no, that was great. Apparently they had a lot of fun in the office that day trying to work those out according to the director.
I bet.
So, So, and then the only other thing that I wanted to mention before we talk about this social media thing that we spoke about is, what was I going to say here? So Nakajima said that during this film, because it was just him a lot in this location by himself, cutting his clean-cut image, so to speak, he was put through the ringer. And he said in interviews, I had no one to talk to. My best friends were the spiders and the animals, because they did actually put those spiders and those creeper crawlies on the set with him and just left them there. So he spent days on end sitting in a closed set with a bunch of creepy crawly spiders. He's like,
it kind of sounds like the director's certainly taking influence from like Hitchcock and Kubrick and David Fincher.
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm lucky that I believe he's still alive and well and safe and having a thriving career today. But I'm glad that he walked out.
But you know what? When he flicks his wrist like this, spider webs shoot out. So I don't know what that means.
Correct. So why don't we land the episode on this last point? That was a bit of a real life inspiration, sort of.
So I think we both came to this same note together as we discussed earlier. So there's some background behind the Manhole girl strategy, right? So when he realizes that, and again, you kind of, even I put this together, it's a really well shown. He realizes no one's going to come and save a drunk man lost in a hole. Right? That's why he sets it up, the fake profile on Pekka/Twitter as Manhole Girl. Creates the AI girl, the photo, the high-pitched text voice, because he correctly guessed the internet is much more likely to be white knights and come and rescue such a beautiful girl, right? Yeah. Rather than a salaryman office worker that he was. So that leads to the bizarre sequence of, all these anonymous internet detectives, like you said, keyboard warriors, people with this, crazy sense of justice, who suddenly, dive into train schedules and manhole cover designs and images he saved and noises from trams and trains to triangulate his location, work out where he is and come rescue him, right? Yeah. Which is a direct nod to real-life Japanese stalker incidences where fans have found idols' homes through certain things. Now, as you noted, it comes down to, and this again was an influence for these guys, a real Japanese pop idol whose home was found by an obsessive stalker who he deduced her location by studying her photos, figuring out the landmarks that were reflected in her eyes in these photos by zooming in and finding them, and then basically going to her house. Yeah. So it's not just that they made this stuff for people to do, it's that this stuff actually happens. So
let's jump into this. So the Japanese Idol was a 21-year-old member of the J-pop group Tenshi Tushukeni Yomi. Her name was Ina Matsuoka. The perpetrator was a 26-year-old called Hibiki Sato, right? So using the tools that are dramatized in hashtag Manhole everything that you've just mentioned. Reflection analysis, digital surveillance, video analysis, and then there was actual physical tracking. So on September the 1st, 2019, Sato waited at the train station he identified, followed her home, and subsequently attacked her. He covered her mouth with a towel, dragged her into a dark corner. He sexually assaulted her and caused injuries to her face. So that's truly horrific.
Yeah.
And that happened in September the 17th, 2019. Small cold comfort is justice was at least relatively quick in Japan. So in February 2020, the Tokyo District Court sentenced him to 30 months in prison for the assault and stalking. 30 months feels light, but I'm no legal expert and otherwise. I'm happy that he was caught, that it was held to account, and it all occurred versus being dragged on for years.
Yeah.
That can occur. That is truly disturbing, that, the life imitating art imitating life aspect was, I actually can't believe they can do that. Maybe I shouldn't be shocked that
in
they
this
can
day
do
of
that.
the amount of digital tools we have, it goes to show like you're talking about mental well-being earlier, and as well as just the stalker mentality, that the level they'll go to meet these people is just phenomenal.
It's crazy. So, anyway, I mean, look, I think, we've spoken a lot about both films. I think, of the two films, hashtag Manhole, as I said, I'm really surprised it maybe didn't get more of an audience, or it didn't achieve anything at the box office. Maybe there was something happening there that we couldn't quite get access to, but it certainly, to your point, it certainly does have a bit of an old boy influence to it. Do you remember the Ryan Reynolds film, like Buried?
Yeah.
That came out in 2010.
Yes.
Colin Farrell's Phone Booth, these type of influences, like, it doesn't feel out of place in a list with those other films.
No, 100, I agree.
Right? And there wouldn't be Daylight either. I thought it was pretty solid, Jeff.
I agree. Yeah, I was really surprised by this film, as I said, because 45 minutes in, I'm like, okay, the dude's stuck and he's just trying to... I actually thought the way he was talking to the ex-girlfriend, it was going to cause some sort of friction thing, and that was the only way to get out. But then, as I said, it does that flip, and suddenly he realises this isn't about me falling in a hole, and I have not fallen in a hole in Shinjuku, like he says.
Or he has, but the hole that he fell into is, sort of like a metaphysical hole that maybe he fell into many years ago, and it was just coming to terms.
See, well, I didn't think like that.
But at the moment, and then just closing out on Cube. I mean, a remake of a film that became a cult sensation. I mean, it's got an extra 18 minutes on the original.
Yeah.
Did it make that 18 minutes count?
No.
I mean, I think we both landed at no. I mean, there was some interesting stuff. I think it had the potential, if they had have trimmed back 18 minutes, if they had have maybe upended one or two more things and done things with intent and purpose, it could have been really good.
I think the tension, like you said, the tension wasn't there like the original.
Yes.
Because, and look, as I said, they specifically took that less gory, more social version of it than this. I'm not saying they had to lean into the gore more. I've got to say that opening sequence and the way that guy dies was pretty impressive.
It's pretty good.
In terms of best scenes for me, it was that. But then the next scene when they open the door and it's literally him, then the piece of flesh, great setup payoff, I thought. But yeah, I didn't see the reason for this, and I didn't get it fully. And you're right, maybe if they'd ranked up the tension, made the numbers a bit harder, built that tension into that character arc story, the differences in the social standings, all that kind of stuff, it might have played a lot differently. Who knows?
So I think it's pretty obvious who won the rematch, Jeff.
I'm pretty sure we're both at hashtag Manhole.
Hashtag Manhole.
So it is.
So I'm glad we're aligned
Yes.
again on this one. So what do we have coming up next week?
So we spoke about it. You know what? We're going to explore that deep concrete to jungle of South Korea. We're going to look at Project Silence and Concrete Utopia.
Looking forward to it.
All right, mate. We'll see you then.
See you, Jeff.
Bye.